Welcome to the Forward Marketing Podcast, the podcast that covers internet marketing strategies and leadership tactics to move your business forward. With your host, Joshua Jarvis. Hey, and welcome back to the Forward Marketing Podcast. I am your host, Joshua Jarvis, and what you're excited about today, because today is kind of like, maybe not exactly the middle of the year, depending on when you listen to this, but it's going to be a year of review. Not a review of my episodes, not necessarily that, I was going to say prideful or arrogant, but basically looking at the year and just saying, okay, what is it that's important that we kind of notice? What are the trends that business owners need to be aware of? What's going on? And this came from a conference that was recently done where, basically I looked through I think it was almost 300 slides to come up with the information that you needed to know as a small business owner. And so last week we talked about the F8 conference from Facebook and what are they doing, kind of focusing on, video is going to be big, VR is going to be big, and then these sort of apps or social networks that are sort of sub-social networks, that those are places where you may need to be. And so that's why next week's episode, or the next few weeks' episode, we're talking about LinkedIn again. We're going to talk about, because I made some changes recently that you need to go ahead and update your profile, and also Pinterest as well. So a lot of times business owners overlook Pinterest because it doesn't seem quite as savvy. But I mean, if you're advertising on Instagram, then there's absolutely no reason for you not to advertise on Pinterest because it's basically the same process. And we'll get into that as well. But first things first, just want to kind of get this episode going. And so we're going to be looking at really the 2018 in review as far as technology and everything is concerned. So right now, as of this podcast and as of, a few months ago, we are in a mobile majority world. And what that means is that 53% of all internet traffic right now is happening on mobile phones. And so if you didn't listen to that Mobile First Index episode, then you need to go back and listen to that episode, because everything you think about now has to be thought about from the perspective of a mobile user first. And there's a lot of things that you can do to make the mobile, to sort of integrate the mobile user as well as a desktop user. But you really need to be thinking about the mobile user first, because that 53% is this year, 2018, but that number is going to continue to rise and rise. And as I'm recording this, I'm recording it on a desktop, but the house is full of laptops, iPads, or tablets. We don't have iPads, and phones. And I'm noticing that even me, I love desktops. I think the power that comes with a desktop is, that's what I want, more power. And but I'm finding even I am using the phone to search and things, because I don't want to get up and walk over to my computer and sit down and do a search. I want to do it on my phone. So anyway, important thing is that in 2018, we became a mobile majority world. And like I said, that's 53% of all traffic is now considered mobile. Internet use and mobile users has slowed. And this is kind of an interesting thing, is basically we've reached a point of almost saturation, meaning more people are more connected and less need to be. So what that means is that there's a lot of, and I don't know if you've ever traveled to a third world country, for instance. So like my family and I, we went to Cambodia. That's where my wife is from. And when we traveled there, one of the things that kind of struck me was that everyone had a phone and everyone had Wi-Fi. And so in some places that we went, the families didn't have clean water. They didn't actually know where their food was going to come from. They kind of lived day to day. They were kind of in survival mode. But what struck me was that here is a family member. In fact, it was my wife's aunt. She lives in what I call the tree house, but basically it's like a wooden hut, no windows. It was on stilts to kind of keep it away from the water. But there's no, the windows there were just the holes in the wall. And so there's not a lot of protection. If it rains, the water's going to get in. Just imagine making a fort out of the wood that you found, lying around your backyard if you're in the U.S. And so they lived in this hut, and there's no power. There's no running water. And if they ate, it was because they were able to find some fruit or someone blessed them, or they were able to do something. They made something, sort of enterprising, sold it for $1, ate food for $1. And so I'm kind of oversimplifying their lifestyle, but the whole point of the story is that they had cell phones and they had mobile service. And so while we traveled all over Cambodia while we were there, and that was true. And so that's what you're seeing, is that everyone is connected. And so so you're not going to see internet usage go up. You're not going to see mobile usage go up as much because we've reached sort of a saturation point. What that means to you as a business owner is that if you haven't thought about the internet yet, you need to think about it, because you're already way behind. You'd be what they call a laggard on that sort of adoption scale. But if you're listening to this podcast, chances are you're pretty good. What's interesting also is that so we've reached a point of saturation. This is really why that last point was so big, is that we've reached this point of saturation as far as mobile device ownership and internet connectivity. However, what has grown, and has grown significantly, is the mobile and sort of the internet consumption. So basically, people are using it. Social media is a big driver in this. It's huge. And it's the video content. It's what we've been talking about for the last few weeks. And we've been saying this for years. But, the video content is one of the biggest drivers of this new consumption. So something else that's here to stay in 2018 is voice search. Now, you may not realize this, because I don't know if you have an Alexa or a Google Assistant or whatever. I know a lot of my Apple friend users, Apple users, are going to talk about Siri, but voice search and voice activated devices are here to stay. The Echo sold 20 million units alone, and that's a huge number. So Amazon is killing it, and that's part of this whole study as well that we looked at. But voice search is here to stay, and voice services are here to stay. So as you consider your marketing channels, one of the things you're going to have to consider now is how does your product or service translate in voice, and how does that pop up? And so maybe not this year, and maybe not even next year, but in the coming years, you're going to need to think about voice search optimization, just like you do search engine optimization, because people are going to be relying on these devices. And the unfortunate thing about these voice activated devices is that instead of giving you a display of results, they just give you the result they come up with. And that's kind of dangerous, if you ask me, is that assuming that Wikipedia is always right, assuming that Amazon is always where I want to search, assuming that Fox News is always where I want to get my information is dangerous. So, or CNN or whatever. So that's a big deal. So the next one is that 25% of the U.S. sort of gross domestic product is actually tech companies. And right now, their biggest challenge is this: how to use their data legally. The reason they exist is because there's so much data now about us, and so many marketing channels and so many opportunities to really create, hearing someone on an interview on StoryBrand, and the guy was talking about basically the best time to be alive is right now. There's never been a better time to be alive, because there's less people in poverty, there's more people who have access to information, but at the same time also think about how spoiled we are, particularly in the U.S., where we can actually we have marketers that are marketing to us so that we can create a lifestyle that's unique to us, unique to each individual, and that's just never happened before. And so these tech companies are basically, they're using that data to be able to do that, but it's a big deal. Is that that's the biggest challenge right now. Their biggest challenge isn't innovating. I guess that's kind of my point, is that the tech companies' challenge isn't innovation, it's actually being compliant with the rules and regulations. And so to me, that's a problem, but it's also a challenge for businesses that they need to be compliant. So there you go. E-commerce is rising and retail visits are down. We've been saying that for years, year over year. To me, the big takeaway here is that there's a huge opportunity here. I'm going to go kind of counter to what the point suggests, because I think it's counterintuitive. but I think there's a huge opportunity for experiences. We saw Toys R Us fall and file bankruptcy, and people's lives get destroyed by that company, and yet had the leaders had some leadership and actually said, you know what, we have an opportunity to create a wonderful experience for children that would create loyal customers for years. They would still be here, they'd be thriving, and people would be loving to go there. I can remember taking our children there before it closed down very recently, and they loved to walk up and down to see the toys. But that was the experience. The experience was all the toys on the shelf. That was where it ended. And when we went to New York, go to FAA Shorts, and then to see the toys displayed in just a completely different way, I think there could be, that could be 10x. So the store in New York could be 10x. But it still was one of those experiences that, they'll remember that forever because of how it was almost like going to like Disney World or something. Whereas going to Toys R Us is like going to Home Depot. It's like, here's this warehouse and here's the toys. So anyway, big missed opportunity. So what does that mean to you? Is that basically you can create experiences. So it doesn't matter what industry you're in, real estate, financial planning. I'm speaking to all of my LinkedIn people, but you could also be even in e-commerce where your brand starts to have a real voice, starts to create an experience for the user. So whether you're online or you have the opportunity to have a brick and mortar, that more people would prefer the convenience of online. So what's going to draw them out? What's going to be that experience? And this backs up, if you look at any millennial data, talking about the millennial generation, it's the generation that wants experiences over everything else. So that's just a big opportunity. More tech companies are founded by first and second generation immigrants. So I think it's more than half is the stat. So more than half of the tech companies that you know about were founded by first or second generation immigrants. This is really a big deal because basically as these founders gain more and more status in the country, the view on immigration is going to shift. And I'm kind of a supportive of immigration. And so don't tune me out now. I'm not going to get on any soapbox about this. But it's just interesting to note that those leaders wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for an open door. And frankly, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for an open door, a long time ago. And so we won't go as far back to, the Indians or anything like that. This is not, we're going to keep this politically light. I'm pretty agnostic when it comes to politics in general. But the point is that these guys are, one, representative of a great immigrant class, and two, it's a big deal. It becomes a big political deal because, if we close our borders, then we are closing out people that could be changing our economy for us. And so we just need to be paying attention to it. You need to be dialed into the politics of this because, how do you protect yourself and at the same time keep the doors open for the people that you want? So anyway, just something to think about. I think it's a big, big deal. And right now, China is our biggest competitor. So when it comes to those tech companies, China is number 2 behind the U.S. as far as that stuff's concerned. So when your child asks you when your child has an opportunity to study another language in class, it used to be, we're being overrun with people from Mexico, so you need to learn Spanish. That was what my parents told me. I know that's politically incorrect and maybe offensive, but that's basically what I was told. But what I'm telling you is that Chinese is probably the thing, you learn Mandarin or something to operate in the world's economy, particularly as the world becomes a world economy and as China becomes more and more economic as far as a factor. And, they're already all over American businesses. And so what a huge advantage it would be to have the ability to work with the Chinese. So some bad news in 2018 is that household debt is its highest, even though employment is basically, and the employment rate is also at its highest. So basically, very few people can't find a job. In fact, most people, most of the companies I talk to are struggling finding good people. But for whatever reason, the household debt is the highest. And what you need to pay attention to is that typically, like in real estate, there's a cycle. and it's about every 7 or 8 years. There's a real estate cycle, and so we're due. We had fallen so much in 2007 or 8 with the short sales and everything that the cycle, so it's come back up. Where now, if you have a house and you bought in this time period, the house is more than likely worth more than what you paid for it, right? Because the housing market is up. So we're due for a correction in that area. If you look at cryptocurrency, they say that's a bubble. If you look at the stock market, they say it can't sustain the level of growth that it's at. There's a lot of these factors. The other part of this is with this debt being so high, we're setting ourselves up again for another fall, another kind of crash, because as we as Americans become over leveraged, that's basically what happens. It just can't sustain itself. So what does that mean for you as a business owner? It just means you need to be a better steward of your finances. It needs to be that you need to be kind of forethinking, maybe start saving, getting rid of your debt and start saving. I know I sound like Dave Ramsey here, but basically you need to build a war chest. Because when the market crashes, that's when the greatest exchange of wealth actually happens. When the market crashed, that was when the hedge funds came in and bought up all this real estate. I mean, it was such a big opportunity. So, and I know people who became millionaires. And then, in fact, most of the millionaires that I've met made it when something sort of bad happened and they took advantage of it. So right now, and you should have been doing this already, but right now you need to be saving money. You need to have a savings account in your business and being ready for this, the next sort of crash or the next sort of fall, so that you can take advantage of that. So whatever it is, whatever bubble bursts, and it's not going to be every industry. When the real estate market went down, there were still other industries that were doing well, but it did affect everyone in some sort of way. But the key to it is that you need to be ready for that. And I mean, you need to be ready for that in any year, but certainly if you look at the cycles and you sort of look at timing, that would be a big deal. So just kind of a side note there. One of the things right now that's huge because of this debt is the side hustle, the Uber businesses. And it's just important for you to know that maybe because the economy is changing, because the demographics are shifting, are there opportunities in your business where you could have a part-time person that maybe has a flexible schedule and is able to help your business? So like even in my business right now, I have a few writers that help me write content, and those writers write when they want to. They have a schedule, but it's not set in stone. Like they don't have a 9 to 5. And that's kind of the world we're moving to, where everyone's an independent contractor. And if you haven't been thinking, like if you're an employee and you're listening to this for some reason, thank you, first of all. But if you're listening to this and maybe you're employed somewhere, that you need to think about yourself as an independent contractor. Recently, my dad was sort of forced out of IBM because of his age and everything else. And, they would never say that publicly, but I can. And but then he got rehired as an independent contractor. It makes sense because they're going to cut his benefits. But, and luckily he's got some great talents, and so they can use that. But the reality of it is that you need to be thinking about yourself, especially if you're employed as an independent contractor. But if you're an employer, you also want to think about, could you potentially use people as independent contractors? That the changes that were made by our government previously actually sort of help facilitate this, because businesses, especially large ones, would much prefer to have independent contractors because it limits the number of benefits that they pay. It turns out that the younger generation, almost prefers that style because it lets them do multiple things, including things that they want to do or doing things that they don't want to do for a short period of time. So the side hustle is huge. Just some numbers I thought were interesting. They don't really apply a whole lot to your business, but I thought you may find that interesting. That the average Uber driver makes $21 an hour, but only works 17 hours a week. So it's a typical part-time job. But that's a pretty good hourly wage. Hopefully no one's having rage while they're doing riding Uber. But 21 hours, if they work 40 hours, it said basically that rate goes down. But just imagine this, that someone driving Uber, if they worked a 40-hour week and you average that out over 50 weeks, my math's not going to be 100% accurate, but it's about $42,000 a year. And so that's what people are working for as a part-time. And that's super affordable. If you got a talented person to work part-time for you for $40,000 a year, and that's basically you're paying them $20,000 because they're working half of that. That's a pretty good deal when you consider that a lot of those salaries that were starting at 40 are now at 60 because of the great employment rate we've got. The average Etsy person makes about $4,700 a year, and that's sort of averaged out over people over all the businesses that some of the businesses that are doing $1 million and some of them are doing $0. And so Etsy is another place where people they make their crafts or whatever and they're selling it on there, and then the Airbnbs average about $6,100 a year per person. So just when you look at these side hustle things, and then the big takeaway is, why are people doing it? It's that getting to choose their own hours, as well as a sort of a sense of control and accomplishment, because they're able to do something that generates income for their family. But a lot of it also is tied back to this household debt conversation, because it's school loans and other things like that. So the U.S., speaking of debt, the U.S. has the seventh most debt in the world, sort of divided by their GDP. So if you take all the world's debt and you sort of divided it by their GDP, USA comes in seventh. And so that's a big deal. And what it means is it's unsustainable. Like, us having this level of debt is unsustainable. I know it feels like you're listening to MSNBC or CNN or Fox or whatever, but it's a big thing for our businesses, because this kind of stuff affects us. The more the government spends, the more they need to tax. The more they tax, the more they take out of our pockets as business owners. So it's a big deal. So the big takeaway from 2018 is pay attention to politics, because if you weren't paying attention, then goodness, depending on who you are, I've got a good 50% chance that you didn't like the candidates, one of the candidates that was voted, that our family might have voted for, and then I've got another 50% chance that if you voted for who's currently president, you probably aren't happy with him either. So the chances are really good that people are not happy with the political system right now. Well, the problem is that we voted them in. Right? And so we need more people to be awake about this stuff, because it affects us. And just as a little side note here, man, just because of comparison, in 1987, 42% of our government budget was set aside for, the services, the health care, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, those sort of things. And now it represents 63% of the spending. So, 2/3 almost of our spending is in, basically handouts, and we need those handouts for the less fortunate. But do we need 63% of our budget to go to that? I don't know. And it's kind of a big deal, because here's the reason why. The average payout is $20,000 per household. That currently represents 34%, so 1/3 of the median income for a person. So when you look at what's going on with the government right now, and the way that our stuff, it's just unsustainable. And any business owner sees this. And so 2018, let that be the year you start saving money. Let this be the year that you build your war chest to take advantage of the next cycle. And also let this be the year that you become active in politics, whether that means that you're actively running or actively supporting someone who's running, or just getting informed. I know a lot of times we're so busy that we don't read, like I wasn't able to read every candidate's position on a most recent local election, and I kind of felt bad, so I just didn't even vote because for that one particular category, because I was like, well, I'm not informed, and so shame on me. But the reality of it is, like I said, as a business owner, we have a responsibility to steward our employees, to steward the money that we have to grow our business, but we also have a responsibility, and part of that responsibility, I guess, is to be involved in the local government and politics and things like that. So that's the big takeaway, is that, one, you need to be paying attention to the government, and two, that the internet and mobile and sort of the the video content, the social media content, the sort of authentic, transparent content, or the consistent or the great creative content. Those sort of things are the things that people are absorbing and using, and so you've got to keep on top of this stuff. Maybe not like let's say you're a contractor. I mean, not a contractor. You're like you're a handyman, for instance. Maybe none of this matters to you except for maybe that government part, right? So you're going to get involved in the government side of things, but you actually need to pay attention to, what could come in. Would someone steal part of your business if someone came in and started marketing in a local area and doing videos on small fixes that people can do on their own, or how to know when to do, replace their deck? So you need to be thinking about these. Luckily, a lot of the episodes we cover, we go into real specific examples on ways to stay relevant and some ideas for you for content. So be checking out the past episodes, and then also as we get in, because I'm done with the update, no more of the update, and but the actually I do have one more point on this update, and that is 49% of shopping started at Amazon versus 36% started on their search. So when people search, the first place they're going is Amazon. So if you have an e-commerce business, you need to put your product on Amazon because search is becoming less and less important when it comes to e-commerce and products. So that was a little note that I forgot to mention to you guys about that. But so anyway, so the next few episodes, we're going to get off any sort of political conversation. Hopefully I didn't lose any friends, and get into talking about the summer of growth hacking. And so we've got a Pinterest episode lined up for you, how to leverage that to generate leads for your business. We have a LinkedIn made some changes, so you need to update your profile. We have a LinkedIn episode. We also have a landing page episode, which I'm really, really excited about because it's one of the biggest things I see small business owners make a mistake on. And so we have some other episodes outside of that lined up, but really getting into the next sort of 5 to 10 episodes being really just growth hacking techniques applied to either individual social media platforms or like we're going to get back into Facebook, for instance. That's one of your most popular requests, is sort of how to leverage Facebook. So we're going to spend some time on that in the future, as well as some other things. But as always, I would love it if you have questions or concerns or requests. You can email me at joshua@forwardmarketing.com. You can actually reach me personally online at @JarvisTeam on Twitter. And so I always look forward to hearing from you and understanding, like I said, and as I mentioned last episode, I've not made any pitches or sales pitches on these episodes at all. And one of the ways that you can help me is by going to iTunes and actually giving us a great review, sharing it with your friends. The more listeners we get, as we cross this 1,000 download threshold last time, as we get into sort of a maybe we were originally sort of a starter podcast or a D level. Maybe I was getting a D out of a grade. We're starting to get a little bit more traction. It'd be great if you shared it so that I could sort of keep it free for everyone. And like I said, and your emails help me come up with this content. So hopefully you found this informational. If you didn't, the good news is next week, we'll be covering some growth hacking stuff that you can actually implement in your business. But the biggest takeaways, again, on this 2018 in review is that the mobile traffic is here to stay. 53% is now majority. And people are consuming this content over and over again. And you need to be aware of the changes that people are making, like buying things through voice, how they're using Amazon, and this side hustle thing for your business. So anyway, thanks so much for listening, and I look forward to talking with you